What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Doc and Dog presented by the Fantasy Mafia. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I'm here with my co host Rydawg. And we are this is actually the last installment of our MLB ranking series, and we are doing the top 20 outfielders in this episode. So we'll hop right into it. Some of these guys are going to be pretty short and sweet. When we get to the top, I was telling Rydawg, I don't think there's much to say about Acuna, Trout, Yelich, Bellinger. They're stars. I mean, what else do you want to say? So we'll hop right into it. We'll start off with number 20 today, which is Austin Meadows, who former big prospect, finally broke through last year. Batted 291 last season, 83 runs scored, 33 home runs, 89 RBIs, 12 stolen bases. I will say probably my biggest problem with Meadows at this point is he's been shooting up draft boards. And we talked about a lot of guys of value in the last episode when you start looking at Laureano, Nazuna, Benintendi, McNeil, Mercado, guys kind of in that range. They offer a ton of value. So interestingly enough, Austin Meadows has been going around pick 40, so right pretty consistently in that fourth round. And it seems like a pretty steep price to pay. I mean, this is a guy that stole 12 bases, so he does have some speed, but there's guys that offer more speed production, more run production. The 291 average is probably the most enticing part, but I've talked before, there's ways to make that up with Jeff McNeil, Brian Reynolds, so I like Austin Meadows. I like his talent, but I'm not thrilled with his value.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, pick 40. That's way too rich for my taste. Austin Meadows, I mean, he is what he is. I mean, he does have a good average and he does hit for power, but I mean, I picked 40. It's too high for me. I would much rather wait till I pick 100s and get a guy that we've discussed in the last episode, like the Mercados, the Reynolds, or whoever for average. And that's where I stand on Austin Meadows. I mean, he is a great player, but I'm not going to spend a fourth, fifth round pick on him.
Yep, for sure. Number 19 is one of your boys, Victor Robles. Last season, he batted 255, 86 runs scored, 17 home runs, 65 RBIs, 28 stolen bases. So he has a lot of upside. He's still only 23 years old, and I think that's one of the most enticing things about him is I don't think we're done seeing him grow. I mean, he's going around pick. He's moved up quickly. I remember when we first did our Nationals mini episode, and he was going around pick 100, and he's kind of shot up draft boards, and he's going around pick 75 now. So people really like him. A lot of people are on board. I mean, I like him at the top of that lineup. There's going to be guys like Turner and Soto that can drive him in, and it kind of depends where he. I mean, is he expected to be their leadoff hitter? Would you say as a Nats fan right now?
I've always expected Turner or Eaton to be a leadoff hitter, but Robles has the speed to do it. You could really plug one of those three guys in to be the leadoff hitter. I mean, I would rather have Robles. Robles has a little more power than what most people think as well. So, I mean, Turner has some pop in his bat, but I think him and Robles, I think they're actually about the same, really, when it comes to pop in the bat. Either one of those guys, in my opinion. Eaton isn't as good as Turner or Robles, obviously, so I want to have Eaton hit lower.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you could flip-flop those guys, either or. But Turner, in my opinion, is faster than Robles. It's close. But it depends on the pitching matchups and all that, too. But I think
Yeah.
I think Robles could succeed in the leadoff spot, though.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, it seems like he's going to be somewhere in the top part of that lineup. I mean, they have a very strong upper half of their lineup. So I just love him because once again, he's one of those guys. I think he has 25 potential, probably more than 25 steals, but maybe at his peak, he can hit around 25 home runs and 30 plus steals. So I mean, I love his upside. He's still young. He's growing. He'll probably go through some growing pains with him during the shortened season, but I like his place in the lineup. And in dynasty leagues, I've been trying to buy him because I love his upside there.
Oh, yeah, especially in dynasty leagues. Robles is definitely going to have a better year than he did last year. He's going to grow as a player. He's going to grow into his own, and he's going to succeed great with this lineup. And he's definitely going to have to step up with the departure of Rendon. And I think he knows it's his time to step up and show that he's a former top prospect for a reason.
Yep. So we'll move on to number 18, which is Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees. He last season He's dealt with injuries as he has throughout the course of his young career. Batted .272, 75 runs scored, 27 home runs, 55 RBIs, 3 stolen bases. And he started to climb up draft boards. I mean, he's a guy, I love him in that Yankees lineup. He's going to have lots of opportunity to drive runs in. He's always been a high on base guy. If your leagues count on base percentage as one of their categories, that ups his value a little bit. But, for me, it's never been a question of Aaron Judge's talents. As much as we don't like to talk about injury concerns, he's consistently had problems with it over the last few years. But when he's on the field, I mean, if he didn't have injury concerns, this is a guy we probably have in our top 10. I mean, he provides a ton of power, scores a ton of runs, has always had a high average when he does play. So he has all the ability in the world. He continues to slip in drafts. I mean, I was taking him around pick 90 in a few drafts I did about a month ago. He's fully expected to be ready for the start of this season. So if you can grab him, I am all on board.
I would agree too, and I mean, his injury history just scares me. The power is there. He's a guy that I would definitely take if he fell to the right pick. I wouldn't reach on him. I'd let the value of his come up before I would take him.
Yep, I would agree with that. We'll talk about another interesting name next. Number 17 on our list is Yordan Alvarez of the Houston Astros. Last season, he only played in 87 games, but as we know, had a scorching hot run during that time. Batted .313 with 58 runs scored, 27 home runs, 78 RBIs. So he's an interesting name for me. I mean, I love his talent. I think he can be one of the elite hitters in this game. One of the things that concerns me during the shortened season is he has been dealing with a knee injury. And, that concerns me a little bit at a young age. If he's already dealing with some lower body injuries, that can really start to mess up the mechanics of your swing. I mean, that's a conversation further down the road. But I'm a little concerned if that knee injury lingers on during the course of the season. He's been going pick 37 right now, so really in the third round as one of your first picks off the board, and he makes me nervous in that spot. In dynasty leagues, I definitely like him. Once again, that knee injury, it worries me. He's a young guy. He shouldn't be dealing with that at 23 already. So if it lingers on, we'll see how he deals with it. But I'm not a big fan of where he's going right now.
Yeah, I'm not either, honestly. It's way too rich for me again. These are going to be the guys that we're going to talk about. They're either good value or just, there's no in between here with these guys that we're going to be talking about. And Yordan Alvarez is another guy. I mean, a knee injury at 23, you said it best. You shouldn't be having any knee or back problems at such a young age. So it really is worrisome. I mean, the talent's there, but in the back end, first, early, second, I don't think I would take that in the redraft. Dynasty, I would. Not redraft.
Yep, I'd agree with that. Number 16, Giancarlo Stanton, also of the Yankees, so pretty close to one another here. Last season, he only had 59 at-bats in the major leagues, batted .288, 8 runs scored, 3 home runs, 13 RBIs, not much to talk about there, but I mean, it's just a matter, he's healthy, and it looks like he's going to be ready to go based on all the reports that I have seen. Should slot in right in the cleanup spot there, and I mean, if he has LeMahieu, Aaron Judge, and Torres ahead of him, I mean, he has all the opportunity in the world to drive in a ton of runs. This is a guy, when he's on the field, he can lead the league in home runs and RBIs at any given time. I like his situation a lot. Obviously, I like the ballpark. Once again, I don't like talking about the injuries, but 3 guys in a row now, here we are. But these are guys to me that would be probably top 10 guys, if maybe not Alvarez because he's still young and a little unproven, but with Judge and Stanton, to me they're top 10 guys if they're healthy, and we're 100% confident in that. Maybe it plays into their favor that they don't have to stretch themselves out for a whole 162 game season. We just got to get 60 healthy games out of them this year. But I mean, there's no denying Stanton's talent. He's going around picks 65 to 70, it looks like right now. So for one of the premier power hitters in the game, this is a guy that was going in the first 2 rounds pretty consistently a few years ago. So I mean, I love his talent, and it's weird to say that there might be value to be had there, but if he's healthy, you could see him way outperform that ADP.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think if he could stay healthy through the 60 games, he could probably lead the league in home runs. Stanton is just freakish power. I actually like Stanton more than Judge. I've never been a big Judge fan, but I mean, there's no denying if they both can stay on the field, they're both top 10. But for me, if as a personal preference, I just like Stanton more. I think he is the better player, and that's all for me, in my opinion. They both need to stay healthy for them to both have their stocks rise a little bit, but we'll see what happens. They both just seem to get injured if a fly lands on them or if someone throws a peanut at them or something. So it's too much of a headache.
There's no high fiving, so they don't have to be worried about getting hurt with a high five. So.
Oh, well, that's good. No touch.
Number 15 is the Kansas City Royals, Whit Merrifield. Last season, he batted .302, 105 runs scored, 16 home runs, 74 RBIs, 20 stolen bases. Feels good that we're going to be talking about someone where we don't have to talk about their injury concern, but we will talk about how terrible the Royals are. So,
Yes.
that's the biggest problem with him. He's going pick 43 right now, and we've kind of mentioned this kind of briefly in the previous episode with Starling Marte, but in those first few rounds, I really don't want to feel like there's a good chance I'm going to be disappointed by one of my first 4-round picks. And for me, that's what Whit Merrifield feels like. Being with the Royals, yeah, I mean, he'll bat around 290 to 300 in that range. He'll score some runs just because he's the leadoff hitter, and eventually they'll score a few runs. But he's a borderline 2020 guy. But we talked about it. You can find those guys later in the draft. So I feel like Whit Merrifield is one of those guys that, based on the production you get from him, you're just going to be very disappointed.
I'm kind of on the opposite side. I don't think you're getting any value, but you could look at it from this standpoint too. I like Whit Merrifield just because he has the second base eligibility. So you gotta put that in perspective. You're also getting your 300 hitter and your 2020 guy, so you can afford later in the draft to also take a guy like Joey Gallo, who's going to hit his 40, 50 home runs. But then again, there's only 3 guys on the offense for the Royals that are worth the crap, and that's Whit Merrifield, Jorge Soler, and Mondesi. So the lineup isn't strong. It's not too terrible. They have those 3 guys out of the whole 9, but outside of those guys, it's just going to be tough. And you can still play him as an outfielder as well as second base. So, I mean, he's one of those guys that's just a safe pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the things I'd really like to see from him, when you look at his career stats, in 2017 he had 34 steals. In 2018, he had 45 steals, and then he went down to 20 in 2019 with more games played. He played all 162 games in 2019. If this was a guy I was 100% confident saying that he was a 20 home run, 40 steal guy, then I think that's a pretty, then it's slam dunk, a nice pick there. But I guess that's what worries me a little bit is I'd like to see a little more speed out of him compared to what we saw last year. So we'll see if he returns to that form for the shortened season. Number 14 here, Eddie Rosario of the Minnesota Twins. One of your other boys. Can I call him one of your boys?
He is one of my boys. You can go right ahead. That is one of my boys.
All right. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that was okay with you. He batted .276 last year, 91 runs scored, 32 home runs, 109 RBIs, 3 stolen bases. I'm going to let you talk about him first.
Oh, thank you. I mean, he's a hell of a player. I'm not just going to ramble on all day. If you guys if you guys are paying attention to the Mafia, I actually wrote a fantasy countdown on him. I mean, when he came into the league at one point, and I still find this interesting, he actually led the league in triples at one point, and I believe that was his 2017 year, 2016 year, is one of those two. Rosario they got more players as well. Mitch Garver is going to come back. I mean, he has a full season. Mitch Garver does. The team is stacked top to bottom. I could potentially see Rosario doing 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, 100 runs, 90 to 100 runs. He's not a steal-based guy, but once he is like running in motion, he picks up speed as he goes. So he's not going to steal bases, but he could turn singles into doubles, etc. Another thing I like about Rosario, as his confidence at the plate and the metrics shows. I mean, the power is there. It's definitely not fluky at all. He gained his power throughout his whole career. He was never really the 30 home run guy when he first was in the minors and early in his career. So for me, taking Rosario at what he's doing, I think that's great value for where he's going. Not great value, it's good value.
Yeah, no, right now he's going to pick 83 overall, so I think you get a decent production in that spot from him. For me personally, and I've been a little down on Rosario compared to you in the past, but I mentioned I like his schedule a lot, and it's weird to talk about in fantasy baseball. Usually when we're talking about schedule, we're talking about fantasy football, but it's very
Right.
relevant in the 60 game season, which isn't going to last very long, and Rosario is going to have one of the easiest schedules in the league. If I was going to make a strength of schedule, he might have the easiest schedule in the entire league. So yeah, you mentioned it. I'm intrigued by his speed as well. I mean, that in that 2015 season you alluded to, he had 15 triples. That's a lot. I mean, that's a ton. And
It
ever
is.
since then, though, when you look at it, he's had 2, 2, 2, and 1. So, a lot of those triples have converted into more doubles and home runs.
Yeah.
He's still hitting. I mean, he's hitting more extra base hits now, but it was kind of similar the past 3 years until 2019, where he kind of really exploded. But I like him in that spot based on his the lineup that he's in, the power production. I think that he won't hit consistently 30 home runs. I think he's a high 20 guy, so I'm not saying he's never going to come close, but I think that that's not fluky, but I think he'll hit a few less. But he's in one of the best lineups in baseball, so he'll drive in runs. He's going to another part of his game that's kind of underrated is he has a 279 career average, and last year he only batted 276. So I could see that. The past 2 years before that, actually, he batted 290 and 288. So I think that if there's one opportunity, he can hit for an even higher average this year. So I like him. I like his lineup. I like his scheduling this year. So I think he's gonna be a sure bet to be a producer this year.
I agree. And you talked about the 2015 season. I wasn't sure. I know it was when he first came into the league. It's just really, it's fun to watch a player completely change his approach at the plate,
Yeah.
especially at a major league level. You go from being having 15 triples in 1 year to going to being a 25 to 30 home run guy. It's really fun to watch guys completely change their aspect of their game at a pro level. You see people do that in high school in the minor leagues, but when Rosario did it, he did it at a major league level. So it's really fun as a fan to watch players evolve like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting when you look at it. I've kind of alluded to this in the past, but there's a lot of data that shows that players start to break through and kind of settle into what kind of player they are around 750 to 1200 at bats, somewhere in that range, depending on the player. And actually, in 2017, that was the first year he actually hit for a little bit of power. He hit 27 that year, and he
Mhm.
crossed over the 1,000 at bat mark. So it's kind of interesting when you see that in real life, where players settle in. Okay, he's not just a speedy triple guy. He's more of a power threat with a high average. And, I always like to see because sometimes when you look at data, you're like, oh man, what does that actually mean? And then you see it
Yeah,
work in real life and you're like, okay, that's kind of interesting. So I like Rosario and where he's headed overall.
I agree.
Number 13, we're going to just talk about all your boys today.
Woo!
Number 13 is Starling Marte. He's only
Hell
13
yeah.
because I had him ranked lower than you, and maybe I'm
Oh,
just hating on him too much, but he,
where'd you have them?
I had him at 14.
Oh, so not too far apart.
No, you had him at 9, so I mean a few spots apart, but
Yeah.
I 295 last year, 97 runs scored, 23 home runs, 82 RBIs, 25 steals. I've talked about him. I bring him up quite a bit. I think he's one of the safest picks you can possibly make. I mean, if you're looking for a 25-25 guy, he's right here for you. He bats around, I think his career average is right around 290. So, I mean, you can't beat that production. I'll let you talk about the lineup a little bit in a second, so I won't really take away that point. But I mean, if you're looking, he goes right around in the third pretty consistently.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt in my mind. If you're looking for that consistency, he's your guy. But I just love upside, and to me, he kind of is what he is at this point. So to me, it maybe depends on how my first two picks go. If I'm a little risky, and I love Devers, but he is a young risk. So if I took a guy like Devers in the second round, I might be prone to take Marte in the third because I'm going to be looking for a guy that I can definitely 287 career average, by the way, and I'm going to be looking for a guy I can rely on. So it kind of depends how your team is constructed, but if you're looking for consistency, I can't argue with them.
Yeah, and I think he had 82 RBIs last year on the shitty ass Pirates outside of Joey Bell and Reynolds. They really haven't had much help. Now he's on a team that consists of Carson Kelly, consists of Peralta's coming back too, and I talk about Peralta a lot. That dude just swings the bat, and every time he swings the bat, he makes contact. And I didn't even mention Ketel Marte and Eduardo Escobar. Well, now I did, and Christian Walker. So it's a very, very good lineup. I wouldn't say great. It's not like the Twins, Reds, etc., but it's a very underrated lineup. And then I realistically could, if Marte was with the Diamondbacks for a full season, I realistically could see 25 home runs, 25 stolen bases, 100 RBIs. I could realistically see almost 20 plus RBIs just because there's so much more talent in this offense. It could really allude to him having 18 or 20 more RBIs than he did last season. It really could. And his average is still there, too. He's a 5-category guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can't say that about very many players. And, especially once you get past Trout, Acuna, Yelich, Bellinger, Betts, Soto, all those guys, you start looking at your next 5-category player. And really it's Marte. A lot of those guys in the middle are only providing power. So, yeah, he's an interesting pick. I think a lot of it depends on where you pick in the draft and what your needs are. But we'll go to number 12 now. Charlie Blackmon of the Colorado Rockies. He
Colorado.
he batted 314 last season, 112 runs scored, 32 home runs, 86 RBIs, 2 stolen bases. He does have the Rona, but he's going to be back.
Rona.
So yeah, he'll be good to go though for opening day, and that's a report as of this morning from this recording. So he looks like all systems go. But Charlie Blackmon, for whatever reason, is always one of those guys where I just don't want him. I mean, maybe it's the Colorado effect, but I mean, he produces every year. I mean, he hits 300. And he goes a few picks after Starling Marte around pick 37. But I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, I guess Rockies players are just disrespected. But he's going to put up his numbers. He'll bat 314, 112 runs scored last year, so high average, scores a ton of runs, hits 30 home runs. Steals have definitely gone down as he's aged. That's the biggest concern I can say about him. Even though those numbers look nice last season, some of his deeper analytics point to him just slowing down slowly. So we'll see if he regresses a little bit more as he ages, but we've already seen it with his stolen base production, and we'll see if it bites into his overall average and power value. But at pick 37, he's another one of those guys. It's just, is it value? Probably not. Is it fair? Yeah, based on his production, I would say it is, but there's a lot of risk with it.
Yeah, I agree. There's a ton of risk with them. And the Rockies lineup is, I mean, they got their players. They got their Arenados, their Stories, and their Blackmon. So, I mean, it's a decent lineup for what it's worth. I mean, but the good part is they are going to be playing their home games at home, which is a reason why we have Blackmon where he has. I mean, the Colorado effect. But for the most part, he is consistent. I would still take Marte over him. That's just my personal belief, though. Just because Marte can, I mean, if Marte can do it in shitty ass Pittsburgh, he can do it anywhere else. So that's my opinion. But Blackmon's always been fun to watch, though, even from a fan standpoint. Blackmon, he just seems so consistent, and he's like 33, I believe, or 32. He's getting up there, as is Marte as well. And I think that's why people don't really take him, for the value, just because you know what they are. They're the veterans that are going to get their job and do it, and not expect more and don't expect less.
Yep, for sure. Kind of on the opposite end is number 11, Ketel Marte of the Diamondbacks, a younger guy who just broke through last year. Had a 329 average last season, 97 runs scored, 32 home runs, 92 RBIs, 10 stolen bases. I've said this before, but I'm a believer in him. A lot of people think last year was fluky. And I mean, don't get me wrong. that 329 average is not likely again. I mean,
No.
that's just the reality. I mean, that's an insane expectation. But based on his metrics, he was expected to hit around 300, 305 last year. So this is a guy that can realistically be a consistent 290 to 300 hitter. He grew into his power last year, and it's one of those things again. He's accumulated enough major league at bats now, and I think this is a guy that just hit his stride last year, and he's still very young. I mean, you could realistically see him get better. So he's going around pick 50, and I understand that's not value. When you're taking him at pick 50, you have high expectations, but I think he has the kind of upside where he can be a top 20 fantasy player, and I really believe that. So as much as I love my value, I think this is an upside pick for me.
I would agree with that. And plus, he plays second base, and I think he has third base, and he has was it second short and outfield, I believe.
Yep, second short outfield. Yep.
Yeah, I knew that was it. But I mean, the player eligibility comes with it as well. Three eligibility spots. You got to take them. I mean, the value is he's young. He's going to get his stolen bases. I mean, he hits for a really great average, and that's the thing. You could take some of these guys early on that have great averages instead of power. You can get the power elsewhere. There's so many ways different to draft, and I think I expressed this a lot. And it really just depends on where you go in the lineups. But I mean, Ketel Marte is another guy in that Diamondbacks offense that's gonna help out. They're gonna help the Martes are gonna help each other out. So that offense is gonna be interesting to watch, and I can't express enough how underrated it is.
I agree. Number 10 is an interesting name as well. I never know how to feel about this guy, Bryce Harper. Last season, he batted 260. 98 runs scored, 35 home runs, 114 RBIs, 15 steals. For me, Bryce Harper, just throughout the course of his career, he needs to decide what he wants to be. If he wants to be the player he was last year, or if he wants to be an elite first-round talent. Because when you look at it, he's so confusing. I mean, we saw it with the Nationals. There was years where he hit over 300 several times, and we saw a ton of power production. And then we see years where he hits 245. There's no in between with him. He's hitting 240, 250, or 320. And I want to see him settle in. What kind of player is Bryce Harper? So I can't answer that, and I want to. And I have actually taken him quite a bit in drafts because I hate Bryce Harper as a person, but he's talented, and I continue to see him slip into the third round, and he does offer some steals. He scores a ton of runs. You have the power production. To me, you're just taking a chance on that average. Is he going to be the 300 Bryce Harper, or is he going to be the 250 Bryce Harper? So he has the talent. It's just a matter if he puts it all together consistently. He has a 276 career average, which is funny because it's right in the middle of those numbers. It's right in the middle of 300 and 250. So he can't decide what kind of player he wants to be. And I like taking the chance on him because if you get a 300 season out of Bryce Harper, I mean, he's offering awesome value. If you get a 300 hitter on a 35 home run pace, 115 RBIs, 15 steals, over 100 runs scored, that's a first round pick. So I like taking the chance on him, but I 100% recognize the risk associated with him.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. It almost seems like he signed that big-ass contract in his first year with Philly. He completely tanked. So we'll see what happens. But at the same time, we've seen him become the league MVP 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So, you know what I mean? You don't know what you're going to get out of him. If he falls to me, I take him. I mean, I'm not going to reach on Bryce Harper either. I like him for what he's worth. I think he's a top 10, top 15 outfielder. And if I can get him at the right value, I'll take him. I mean, he's in a decent lineup. He's got all the potential in the world. But, I mean, you're right. He's a douche of a player. But, I mean, I'll take him if he's there.
And it's crazy to think he's been in the league pretty close to 10 years now. And he's only 27 years old.
This will be 10. No, this will be 9 years. He got drafted.
9.
Yeah.
Yep, 2012 he officially made his debut. So it's crazy to think because I still look at his age. I'm like, man, he's only 27. I feel like Bryce Harper has played forever. And I talked about it with Michael Conforto on the last episode. There's players that just start hitting their stride at Bryce Harper's age. And the guy's been in the league for 8 years now. So I'm excited to see because he's fun to watch when he's at his best. When he had that MVP year, as much as I hate him, I mean he was incredible to watch on the field. So we'll see if he can return that level. One of the reasons that I do grab him in dynasty leagues is because of that age. I mean, he could still play another 10 years
Yeah.
theoretically. So we'll see what he does, but he's a very he's a divisive player. People are all over the board on him. So. We'll go into number 9. We'll talk about another one of your boys, and I'm confident in saying he's one of your boys. That's George Springer.
Yeah.
Uh, Last season, he batted 292, 96 runs scored, 39 home runs, 96 RBIs, 6 stolen bases. We're starting to get to the level of guys where I don't have a lot to say about him. I mean,
Yeah.
George Springer, he's going in the third-ish round. That's where he should be going. He provides value at several categories. Not a ton of steal production. That was the one thing I always wanted to see more from him. I felt like he had more speed and he could steal more bases throughout the course of his career. He's just been kind of. I mean, he stole 16 bases one year, but he's really hovered around that 6 to 10 range most of his career. But he does have speed. But overall, he's the leadoff hitter and one of the best lineups in baseball. So I don't have much to say. I mean, he's going to produce. He's in a great lineup and he's a great talent.
Yeah, he is one of my guys. I mean, he's a 4 category guy. He does it all except really steal bases. He hits for a good average. There's really not much to say. I mean, if I can get him as my second outfielder, that's great. I think he's a borderline 1. We're in the top 10, so this is borderline 1 second outfielders. These are where we're ranking them now. So I mean, he is a top 10 outfielder in my opinion. So I think he's going to have a great year. Hopefully the Astros can turn around and stop cheating, though. That'd be great.
Not your boy, though. He would never do that.
Well, he didn't cheat. Everyone else did.
That's totally possible.
Yep.
All right, we'll go to number 8 then. Maybe a guy to talk about a little more, Chris Bryant. And people are kind of all over the board on Chris Bryant as well, but he batted 282 last year, 108 runs scored, 31 home runs, 77 RBIs, 4 stolen bases. Once again, he's another guy. He's a consistent producer. I mean, that's all that I really have to say. I think he's a little undervalued. He's going around pick 42 right now. And it sounds weird to say a guy at pick 42 is being undervalued, but I mean, this is a guy that's won league MVP, and he's going behind Austin Meadows and Charlie Blackmon.
Yeah.
So when you look at it that way, you're saying, okay, maybe he's a little undervalued, but he very consistently scores over 100 runs, has always been a solid average hitter, will produce home run wise 30 plus every year. 77 RBIs was very underwhelming, but we'll see where he bats in the lineup this season. But once again, just a consistent producer, and I don't really have any in-depth notes about him.
I don't either. I mean, I usually plug him in at my third base. I try to get him as a third baseman if I can. 77 RBIs is kind of an underlier a little bit, so hopefully that number comes up. I guess that's why the undervalue is there. I guess the 77 RBIs shies people away. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, 30 home runs, 100 runs scored, a 280 average. Those are great numbers.
Mm-hmm. Number 7, and I think we have him ranked a little higher than other people, but he's a guy in the shortened season that I moved way up my board, and that's JD Martinez, who's consistently going in the second round. And last season, he batted 304, 98 runs scored, 36 home runs, 105 RBIs. And you want to talk about a guy like Starling Marte, who's been consistent. I mean, that's been JD Martinez over the past few years. If you want to pencil in a guy for a 300 average, if I had to bet on one guy to bat 300 this year, it would be JD Martinez. I mean, he's just that consistent with it. He has a great approach at the plate. In that lineup, he'll score around 100 runs in a full season, has the power production. I know a lot of strategy. We've talked about this, and I know other podcasts have talked about it as well, but a lot of people's strategy is to go with those veterans who you can count on, because you don't have time to mess around with having a bunch of young guys who maybe they could produce, maybe they'll struggle. JD Martinez is going to be consistent, and if there's a guy you want to rely on during the shortened season, I think it's JD Martinez.
Yeah, and I believe we've talked about this in the podcast when we broke the news. we talked about 60-game season. We talked about, and I specifically, I recall talking about Martinez is one of those guys that you only have 60 games. You need to get your points. You need to get your home runs. You need to get your runs scored. You need to get your categories. And Martinez is the guy that's going to come out of the gate, consistently hit for what he's going to hit. He's going to hit the 300 average. He's going to hit those 30 home runs. He's going to hit the 100 RBIs. Martinez is what he is. He's been consistent everywhere he goes. I mean, he's 32, 33 years old now. So he's been doing it for a while. And those veteran guys in their 30s, those are the guys I'm targeting. The Martes, the Martinezes, the Blackmans. I'm targeting those guys because those are the guys that have been doing this shit for a while. And they can adjust it quicker than the young guys can, in my opinion.
And interestingly enough, on the other side of things, our number 6 guy is Juan Soto. And speaking
10,
of
10, 11 years younger.
21 years old right now, Juan Soto. Last season, we all know the big breakout year that he had. 282 average, 110 runs scored, 34 home runs, 110 RBIs, 12 steals. I mean, that's impressive. He really is a 5-category producer. It's scary to me to think that he's 21 years old. I mean, that scares me, especially as a fan of a division rival. I mean, you're going to have to see this guy potentially for 15 more years at his age. And when you think of that, that's just unpleasant for me. But there's no doubt in my mind he's going to be a consensus top. He's going around the 6th pick right now. I mean, there's a ton of talent at the top here, but he's a consensus top 7 pick, I'll say. And I expect that to be the case for many, many years. I mean, I don't have much to say. The scary part is I think he can get better, and I don't like thinking about it. So I'll let you talk about him.
Well, as a Nats fan, I like thinking about it. I mean, this every time when we talk about Rendon leaving and departing, then Soto gets brought up. I'm like, this is the reason why we had to let Rendon walk. Soto is wow. I mean, he has plate discipline. That you didn't mention that. I mean, for his age and his plate discipline and his knacks for waiting for his pitch, God, it is just fun to watch him play. I mean, I got to meet him once at a T-Mobile signing store. I didn't get meet him, but I got to take my picture with him and all that crap. And he's just a very humble guy from what I've met him when I met him. I think he can get better. I think, like you said, that's going to be the scary part, and especially those in dynasty leagues. I like to target Soto just because, I mean, I'm a Nats fan, but besides from that, I mean, the kid's only going to get better, I think, in my opinion. I mean, you talk about people getting in their 27 age where they start to find their groove, and here we are talking about him, and he's 6 years away from being 27, and it's just going to be really, really fun to watch him when he finally gets into his prime. I mean, it's scary to even say that he's not in his prime right now. And I see you're upset, so we can go on to the next player.
No, it's just crazy when you look at it. He's played 266 career games, and his career on-base percentage is 403. So, I mean, it's hard to find guys with OBPs over 400. So, I mean, it's just crazy to me. I don't even know what to say.
And I remember, I have a backstory. A friend of mine was a bat boy at the time. And I asked Harrisburg was playing the Bowie Bay Sox. I live about 35 minutes from the Bay Sox Stadium. And Harrisburg was, and I was like, hey, can you get me to get a Juan Soto signed baseball? And he looked at me. He was like, who the hell is Juan Soto? Because Juan Soto didn't really make his name. I mean, he just ran through the minor leagues. And it was fun to watch. I remember he didn't even start out at Potomac. He started out at our low A, Hagerstown, and he just like ran through the minor leagues. So I got the ball, and then, my buddy texted me like last year during the season. He was like, so that Juan Soto guy's pretty good, huh? I was like, yeah, he's all right.
It's kind of funny when you look at his career throughout the minor leagues, though. I mean, he wasn't a guy that hit for a ton of power. I mean, he had power, but I mean, it's crazy how quickly he's developed that.
Yeah, it was the 2017 season. No, yeah, 2018 season, I believe. He just ran through the minor leagues. I believe he had an injury because we got him at Dominican Prospect. So we have Soto signed up for a couple more years. So that's going to be an interesting contract. But when Soto came back in that 2018 year, 2007, 2018 year, he just really just ran through the minor leagues. He didn't really even like stay in Potomac longer than like a month, and he got called up from Harrisburg Senators Double A straight to the Nats in like a couple months. So he didn't even stay long enough to provide any type of stats. That's just the scary part.
39 games he played in the minor leagues that season, 16 with Hagerstown, 15 Potomac, and 8 with Harrisburg before he made his way to the majors. But in those 39 games, this is funny to look at. 14 home runs in 39 games, 52 RBIs in 39 games,
Yeah,
362 average. So he did okay.
he did. No, I think they should have kept him back a little longer.
Let's go on to the top 5 here. Pretty much the consensus top 5. I don't think there's much to discuss, but number 5 is Mookie Betts. Last season, he batted .295, 135 runs scored, 29 home runs, 80 RBIs, 16 stolen bases. For me, the difference between a guy like Mookie Betts and Juan Soto is that lineup. I mean, the Dodgers probably have the best lineup in all of baseball, and Mookie's going to be leading off for them, so he'll score more runs. He doesn't have as much power as Soto, but he'll steal more bases, probably a higher average. I not that Soto can't bat higher, but Mookie's been a consistent .295 hitter throughout the course of his career, so better average, better lineup. Probably will score more runs, steal more bases. So that's the difference between Mookie and Juan Soto for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the difference maker is the speed, and I think that's what would hurt Soto not being, in the top 5 just yet. I mean, he could definitely be in the top 5. I mean, that's a guy that's only 21 years old, but we're talking about Mookie now. So, Mookie's in his prime now, so he's going to do his thing. He's a 5 category guy, and it's scary that we're going to talk about another guy that plays on the same team in the top 5. But yeah, that offense is just better than the Nats. That Dodgers, they want to win, and they want to win it now by any means. They're tired of coming so close but no cigar, so they're doing whatever it takes.
Speaking of his teammate, he's next, number 4, Cody
next.
Bellinger. So that's a great segue. Last season, he batted .305, 121 runs scored, 47 home runs, 115 RBIs, 15 stolen bases. Very underrated part of his game that he stole 15 bases last year.
Sure.
Now, that's one of the reasons that I love him at his first base eligibility. I mean, how many first basemen steal over 5 bases? I mean, almost none of them, except our boy Danny Santana, but he has first base. He has first base eligibility, but besides that, it's really just Cody Bellinger, and it's scary to think, once again, this is another young guy with a ton of power. I mean, he already has great strike zone discipline. He's still only 25 years old. He actually had a birthday a few days ago and turned 25. So happy birthday, Cody Bellinger. And I mean, it's once again, what do you say about him? I mean, he's one of the young stars of this league in terms of fantasy. With that steal production, he's a 5 category producer, which is something you can't really say about many players, and specifically first baseman, where I think he provides a lot of value, but I don't have much to say.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, he's Mookie Betts' teammate. It's just scary that those two are teammates. It really is scary. I mean, a shortened season, Lord knows what they're going to be capable of doing.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for the Dodgers this year, if they do, this will be the year the Dodgers win the World Series. Because to me, I think this World Series is going to have a little bit of an asterisk next to it because it's a 60-game season. So the Dodgers have been fighting and in that championship conversation for the past decade, and they finally break through, and it's the shortened season that doesn't mean as much. So that's just my gut feeling.
I mean, poor Clayton Kershaw and all those veterans, too. The year that they're going to do it's this year with 60 games.
So, number 3 is Christian Yelich, and I guess there's a little bit of a conversation to have here. Christian Yelich, I have second ahead of Mike Trout, which is a unpopular opinion, but when you really start to look at and there's no doubt Mike Trout's a more talented player. I'm not trying to say that. This is fantasy, though. And when you really look at their production, I mean, I don't know if Mike Trout's a 5 category player anymore, and that sounds crazy to say. He only had 11 steals, and that's steadily gone down over the course of the past few years. You know, he's more of a power threat, which is scary. He still is just hitting his power stride. So that'll be interesting to watch over the course of the next 10 years. I'm really interested to see how many career home runs Mike Trout ends with because he's just stepping into that power. But when you look at their stats last year, Mike Trout 291, Christian Yelich 329. Big difference there. Yelich has been a pretty consistent 300 hitter over the past few years. Runs scored, Mike Trout 110, Christian Yelich 100. Edge to Mike Trout, but very close there. Power production 45 Mike Trout, 44 Yelich. I mean, that's a tie. RBI production 104 for Mike Trout, 97 for Yelich. Once again, pretty close. I guess I'd give a slight edge to Trout, but the steal production 11 for Mike Trout, 30 for Yelich. So that's where it's the big difference for me. I think Yelich is a no doubt 5 category player. Mike Trout, to me, is only a 4 category player at this point in his career. And it's not because he's slowing down. He's just kind of changing. And we talked about it with Eddie Rosario a little bit. He's just changing the kind of player he is. And that doesn't make him any less of a player. I mean, it could arguably he's just as dangerous as he was before. But for me right now, I would just prefer the steal and speed and average production of Yelich.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned the 30 steals. That's a very good point to make, Doc. But I guess what more so was the tiebreaker for me was the fact that Mike Trout has a better lineup around him. He's getting Upton back for a whole year, and he's getting Rendon. I think it's scary enough. Mike Trout could very well hit more than 104 RBIs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the breaker for me. I think they could pitch around. It's crazy to think that they could possibly pitch around Mike Trout. Pitch around, Anthony Rendon to get the Trout, because Anthony Rendon is a very great hitter in his own. And so is Mike Trout. Mike Trout's Mike Trout. But when you compare it's not like you're going to get both these guys anyway, realistically, So, you could, the case to be made is definitely valid for Yelich over Trout. In my opinion, though, if you're bringing in a stud hitter in Rendon, you got Ohtani, and then not to mention you have Pujols still there lurking with his consistently 20 home runs, and then you got, Shohei Ohtani, you got Justin Upton coming back as well. That's just a lot of power for Mike Trout to do more damage.
Yep. Yeah, that's a very good point. If you're talking about who has a better lineup, that's not even a conversation to be had. It's not even, I can't even tell you the 1 through 8 for Milwaukee, but the Mike Trout's our number 2. I don't know if we need to make any more notes on him, so we'll bring up our number 1 then, which is Ronald Acuna, very unexcitingly. Once again, he's a 5-category producer. The one thing I worry about a little bit with him, and maybe I shouldn't be worried about it with him, but his K rate is high, which is common in today's game. But he sometimes teeters on that concerningly high for me personally, where he struggles to, and when you look at his average, there's months that are better than others naturally, but he was a 280 hitter. I'm really interested to see where he settles in his career, because I think if he doesn't lower that K rate, it's going to be tough for him to be a 300 hitter. We're talking about Bellinger, Yelich, and Trout being pretty consistent 300 hitters. Yelich and Trout have over career averages over 300. Then you look at Acuna, all the talent in the world, but I want to see where he settles in. I hope that he can really get a little more plate discipline and become a 300 hitter, because then that's just insanity. But even last year, 280, 127 runs scored, 41 home runs, 101 RBIs, 37 stolen bases. And it's once again just the as much as I don't love the average, right? And 280, I'm acting like he's batting 220 here, but when you're comparing him to these top other guys, there is a little bit of a difference there. But he's the only player in all of baseball that has the potential to have a 40-40 season, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it at some point. He's still young, he's still getting better, but at this point, even with the concerns I have with his K rate, he's still my number 1. There's no doubt.
Yeah, he's my number 1 too, and you just said everything I was going to say. But I guess I'll bring up another point of they brought in Marcell Ozuna. I'm not sitting here comparing Marcell Ozuna to Acuna. Don't get me the wrong way, but they brought in another bat to help this lineup, and this lineup is going to be really fun to watch. It's going to help Ozuna come into his own and get even more RBIs. But the fact that he had 41 home runs at 37 stolen bases, is really good. I mean, that's just insanity. I mean, I can't even think of the last person to have a 40-40 season. I mean, Acuna's on another level. And if he had Juan Soto's plate discipline, you would have the best player in baseball, and one. You really would. I mean,
Yeah.
Acuna is he just needs to calm down a little bit at the plate. That's the only critic of my opinion that I can make of him. I mean, anything else, Acuna is the unanimous one.
The last 40-40 hitter came from your Nats. You don't know that? Come on.
Was it Alfonso Soriano?
Was, yeah. Yep.
See, I knew that. I
Come
wasn't
on.
sure I wasn't sure if there was one after that. That's all.
No,
and Soriano only played for us for 1 year. What a shame.
I love Soriano.
He's so underrated, isn't he? You're so fun to watch. Number 12, second baseman, Alfonso Soriano. Man, I wish he stayed longer.
What a legend. You know all the other 40-40 seasons? Let's see if you can get any of the other ones.
How many of them are there?
There's three other besides Soriano. I knew Soriano because that was a trivia. I played trivia quite a bit, and that was a trivia question a few weeks back. What was the last 40-40 season? But there's three more except Soriano.
Are they all in the 2000s, I'm guessing?
All in the late 80s and 90s.
Shit, I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to get it.
No, I wanted to test you here. That's all right. The one's very tough. The first one ever was in 1988. Jose Canseco had 42 home runs and 40 steals in 1988. That's one that always surprises me. Every time I see that, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. 1996, Barry Bonds had 42 runs and 40 steals before he was on the roids. And then same thing with A-Rod. A-Rod in 1998 had 42 home runs and 46 steals. So we'll see. I really believe that Acuna will be the next guy on that list at some point. Obviously not during a 60-game season, but if he does that, I guess that would be a whole new conversation to have. But I definitely expect him to do it. So any other notes you want to make on the outfielders here?
No, and outfielder is deep as usual. I mean, it is. Outfielders is what is their dime a dozen, after ranking 40 of them. So they really are a dime a dozen.
Yeah, I mean, I really like to try to grab one of those top 6 guys. I hate picking outside of the top 6 this year because I really want to get one of Acuna, Trout, Yelich, Bellinger, Betts, Soto. I mean, in every draft, I just hope that I can get one of those guys. And then I wait a long time because you have a lot of those guys kind of in the middle here. And then you start to have all that value that we talked about in our last episode with young guys like Laureano, Benintendi, Conforto, even Danny Santana, Mercado, Brian Reynolds. There's a lot of value in those later rounds. So I like to grab one of those top guys. And usually, unless there's some nice value in the middle there, I like to wait a little while. As you said, it's very deep, a lot of talent.
I would agree 100%.
So that's all that we have today. We appreciate you guys watching. Rydawg, you want to quickly go over everything that we have coming up with the season starting?
Absolutely. So with the season starting, we have Wednesday. We're going to go live for about 30 minutes. We know you guys are busy and you guys don't want to hear us as much, but baseball season is happening and it's the greatest sport in the world. So why wouldn't you want to listen to us every Wednesday for 30 minutes and we give our opinions on the streamers we have and who we are targeting in the free agency and who's hot, who's not. And I think in those 30 minutes, we'll try and get a quick ice and cold/hot segment where we'll each discuss a player or two who's hot and who's cold throughout the week. And then Saturday, we'll do our live of how our weeks are going in our leagues and answer your questions, etc. So, I mean, baseball season's right around the corner, less than a week away. Play ball, greatest sport in the world. It just sucks we just can't go to a game and drink one of those expensive beers and eat a hot dog.
Yeah, I agree. So lots of exciting stuff. Make sure that you subscribe to the Fantasy Mafia YouTube channel. Check out all our content on thefantasymafia.com as well. And make sure you like us on Facebook. And check out our group, The Hotspot. I'm hoping by the time this posts, we're at 500. But we've grown it pretty quickly. So keep the conversation going. And we'll see you guys next time.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Peace.